Next is file item number 1, AB3, Assemblymember Williams, Isla Vista Community Service District. Huh? Yeah. You don't like it?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Senators. AB3 is a district bill. Over the past year, the Isla Vista community in Santa Barbara County has been faced with many challenges due to high-profile tragic events, including multiple violent sexual assaults, riots, and a mass shooting that emphasized the unique needs of IV. Following these events, the UCSB Foundation Trustees Advisory Committee on Isla Vista Strategies recommended creating a community services district for Isla Vista through legislation. This is not a new idea. It was also cited by a grand jury report within the last 10 years as being the solution for local governance in Isla Vista. As such, AB3 establishes a community service district for providing critical services to the community. The bill is different than any district bill I've seen in my time as a staffer or as a legislator. The bill has undergone extensive community outreach, including 47 public meetings and 4 town halls. AB3 truly reflects the overwhelming majority opinion from the community. In fact, every set of amendments within the bill and every set requested were reviewed and approved in these community meetings. Specifically, AB3 outlines services the CSD can provide, including a tenant mediation program, the financing mechanism for an area planning commission, construct and operate community facilities, and maintain streetlights and sidewalks, the ability to contract for additional police services, which is key, and exercise the powers of a parking district, which may be just as important for improving public safety in IV. It establishes a 7-member board, 5 elected and 2 appointed positions, with one of the elected positions being a 2-year term to make it easier for students to serve on the board. Sets up a process for the CSD to be reviewed by LAFCO and with final approval of the district left to a vote of the public. It authorizes the CSD to levy a UUT and creates a 2-tiered approval process requiring voter approval for the formation of the district and making the operation of the district contingent on the approval of the tax. The current conditions in IV have reached a breaking point. County government is not equipped financially to meet the many unique needs of such a densely populated urban area, and a unique solution is needed. This area is infamous for being one of the most densely populated and urban areas that is not an incorporated city and does not have those higher level of services. AB3 will provide these services and local representation to a community that has been neglected for far too long. With me is Carlos Lopez, representing UCSB Associated Students, and Monica who represents this county of Santa Barbara.
Mr. Chair and members, Monica Miller on behalf of the County of Santa Barbara, and we are in support of the measure. But today, we were supposed to have Supervisor Doreen Farr here with us, who actually represents the district as well as is the chair of the local LAFCO. However, due to a very late night Board of Supervisors meeting yesterday, she was unable to make it. As you know, Santa Barbara is beautiful, but difficult to get anywhere within a short period of time, so she sends her regrets. So she has asked me to read her statement into the record, so I'm going to do that very briefly. So good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is Doreen Farr, and I represent the 3rd District of the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors, which includes the unincorporated community of Isla Vista. I know well the needs and challenges of Isla Vista and believe that AB3 offers the best opportunity the community has had in a long time to choose to create an entity that is both a sustainable source of funding dedicated strictly to the needs of that community and a hybrid governing board of both appointed and elected individuals, which best represents that area's unique diversity. Only you, the legislature, have the power and authority to create this kind of unique community services district. LAFCO can't do it, and neither can the County Board of Supervisors. The first letter Santa Barbara LAFCO wrote on behalf of AB3 was a letter of concern listing a number of questions that they wanted to see addressed. Those questions were addressed over the next several months within those meetings, as well as meeting with the Assembly member. However, the second letter Santa Barbara LAFCO wrote took a position of oppose unless amended to include a role for SB LAFCO in the Isla Vista Community Services District formation process. That has now also been included in this last set of amendments, but SB LAFCO still will not support AB 3, nor will they remove their opposition. So although I'm the current chair of SB LAFCO, I have not supported the position taken by the majority of my fellow commissioners, and neither has my fellow supervisor who sits on the commission with me. In contrast, 2 months ago, the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors took a position of support for AB 3. We know that no change is not the solution. The status quo in Ivy is not working. The problems, issues, and needs of this very unique area are only growing and intensifying as time goes on and are rapidly outpacing the county's capacity to keep up. Isla Vista desperately needs the dedicated revenue stream, the services, and the community building and stabilizing influence that a community services district would provide as envisioned by AB 3. Only you, the legislature, can provide the opportunity to Ivy residents to vote on this matter and decide for themselves if they want to make this vision a reality. Please give them a chance and support AB 3. Thank you. And I'm also available for any questions.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carlos Lopez. I'm a third-year UCSB student, and I'm here to speak on AB 3. As a university student, I'm often asked by friends and family how I'm enjoying my experiences at UCSB. In response, I regale them with stories of my studies and my social life while they nod on, reminiscing about their own experiences. Invariably, one person will pipe up and ask, "Isn't Isla Vista dangerous?" I'll assure them that the stories they have heard are exaggerated or single incidences. However, I know that what I say is not entirely true. Isla Vista is a wonderful and unique oceanside community neighboring UCSB that I've had the privilege of living in for the last 3 years. Many happy memories are made there, and a feeling of community is prevalent. Underneath this and undermining the sense of happiness, is an underlying fear, a concern for personal safety, especially in the light of tragedies of the last year. To address this, we as a community have come together. Long-term residents, renters, business owners, Santa Barbara Community College, as well as University of California, Santa Barbara students. We have come together to do that most American of things, to create a government that provides better services and is more representative of the governed. Also, in American fashion, we have argued passionately about the specific forms our government will take. We have worked through dozens of small meetings and a growing number of small-scale discussions about every facet of our emerging government. What has emerged through this compromise and discussion is AB 3. These discussions have not always been comfortable or easy, but with mutual respect and a common understanding of the many issues that affect our mutual home, we have persevered. Inadequate lighting, no official means to address grievances with landlords, and the myriad problems that come from a lack of control over local taxes all plague Isla Vista. Although perhaps the biggest issue, if the least tangible, is the lack of community investment that comes from people who feel they cannot control the destiny of their community. The measurable benefits of AB 3 are many. Community control over lights, the ability to levy taxes upon ourselves, to abate graffiti, and most importantly, the ability to develop community facilities to directly improve the lives of Isla Vistans. The non-measurable impacts of AB 3 have been an energizing of Isla Vista to produce positive change. In the last year, members of the community have worked day and night to put on events to strengthen our sense of community. The Herculean efforts undergone by dedicated individuals and groups to help improve our town are wonderful, but they highlight the lack of structural support in Isla Vista. Many of their efforts to improve community relations with local law enforcement, to register voters, to provide legal aid, to pick up trash, and to provide family-friendly activities in our many parks would be business as usual in most other places, but in Isla Vista they are exceptional. Our efforts here today are the latest in 40 years of organizing around the idea of greater self-determination in Isla Vista. For 40 years, we have been working to improve Isla Vista, and for 40 years, we have been prevented. We have chosen to pursue our form of self-governance through the only means truly available to us. Santa Barbara County LAFCO has repeatedly prevented Isla Vista self-governance, and they have repeatedly voiced their contempt for our efforts. Detractors from our efforts have raised concerns about the transiency of students and their feelings that there would be no one to fill the positions in our new government. To the first critique, there are two replies. Firstly, the short average stay of any particular student, usually within 3 to 5 years, increases our need for sustainable, systematic improvements in our government so that long-term, meaningful projects can be carried out. The claim that students are a transient population is a very short-sighted claim that often seeks to disenfranchise the single largest groups in Isla Vista, that being students. Secondly, a friend of mine put it best when he said that students with a small s, that is a single generation of students, may come and go, but students with a big S have been, are, and will be a part of Isla Vista for the life of the town. Therefore, our needs must be catered to. Addressing the second concern, that there are not dedicated and passionate residents in Isla Vista, I point to the many efforts made just around the AB3 movement. Scores of students and dozens of non-student residents have collaborated to make today a reality. Even those students who do not work directly on this issue have a great investment and, more importantly, a great stake on what goes on here today. When I speak to friends, acquaintances, and strangers at UCSB, nothing about my work makes their eyes light up the way the idea of self-governance does. I personally have testified before at least half a dozen groups and sacrificed attending class because this is a cause I truly believe in. I may not live in Isla Vista for another 5 years, but I believe in my duty to work to better this town I've come to love for all the future students and residents who will call this beautiful town home. We're here today to help improve the lives of 15,000 people in Isla Vista, and we hope that you'll join us. Thank you.
Very, very briefly.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to be here. My name is Ashkan Minafar. I'm a second-year student at UCSB. I actually grew up here my whole life in Sacramento, so it's quite a pleasure to be in the capital and part of this governing process.
Grades in school, you doing okay?
Yeah, actually really well. It's a bit crazy out there, but keeping up. But yeah, so I'm here to kind of discuss some things. I don't want to reiterate too much what's already been said.
Point's been made, just quickly, because we usually have a couple witnesses, but you're here and we want to give you respect.
Of course. I just want to highlight one thing, and it's simply that my experience in trying to kind of create solutions in Isla Vista, I was heavily involved in one of the major events, which is Deltopia. And simply trying to find solutions to the issue was very difficult without a cohesive, centralized entity to have all these conversations in one place. The inability to be able to, centralize all the conversations in one area, to be able to the point is that in Isla Vista you have 8 conversations all happening at once. Everyone's duplicating work, and there's no division of labor, and there's nothing happening. Luckily, we're able to band together. I was at work with the police. We were able to increase compliance, reduce emergency calls, reduce the amount of arrests made, and reduce the amount of tickets issued. This is all due to our efforts, but however, this is all without any kind of infrastructure and any form of governance that would help us. So I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I'd just like to say that everything we do in Isla Vista is in spite of all our situation, and we do great things in Isla Vista. Great things are happening. There's much more to be done. And with the CSD and with AB3, we can do so much more, and it can last decades rather than 1 year. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Please.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, very briefly, my name is Lanny Ebenstein. I teach economics at UCSB, and I'm a former resident of Isla Vista. I'll just address you very briefly on the utility users tax aspect of the proposal. As several of the previous speakers mentioned, Isla Vista is an urban area. It's 15,000 people within the square in less than half a square mile. And it's an urban area that has specifically been excluded from the neighboring cities of Santa Barbara and Goleta. And for this reason, after much discussion in the community, there's agreement among many individuals that a utility users tax would be the appropriate form to finance the district.
You stopped by my office yesterday. Sorry, I missed you.
I'm sorry?
Didn't you stop by my office yesterday?
Yes, I did.
Sorry, I missed you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I think that that's the appropriate method by which to fund the district.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for hearing me out. My name is Akshay Natarajan, and I'm a second-year resident of Isla Vista.
Are you a student at UC Santa Barbara?
Yes, I am a student at UC.
How are your grades? There's a requirement. You got a teacher right there. You got, if you're going to testify, you got to get like really good grades around here. Go ahead.
My GPA is an uphill battle, let me put it that way.
Okay.
But thank you again for hearing us today. A lot of the points have already been made, but I kind of wanted to give my personal experience as being a student at UC Santa Barbara and a resident of Isla Vista. So like many of the other female residents of Isla Vista, I'm going to be honest, I don't necessarily feel safe 100% of the time, especially at night when walking around. Like any other college town, crime and violence are an unfortunate reality, especially on weekend nights. But what is perhaps even more unfortunate is that at every incident and every tragedy, students have had to fight for the very basic safety services that they actually need. Things like better policing, things like better safety services during the nights in Isla Vista have been something that have been created by student movements rather than something that's been provided by a local government, which is something that should be provided by a local government. And a CSD would provide students with the opportunity to actively participate and engage in local government and be able to express their needs more efficiently and effectively. Large events like Deltopia and Halloween, which actually bring thousands of people from out of town to our community, are actually can actually become rather destructive. I'm not sure if you recall past years where it has been very destructive for our community. But actually, in this past year, Deltopia has actually been a lot more controlled. There were very few arrests. People were a lot safer. And this was actually the result of coordination between students, between long-term residents, and between UCSB administration and law enforcement. And this is just a testament to what coordination and what community involvement can do, which is why we need to take this a step further and really push for this community service district. AB3 is a unique bill for a unique community, for a unique Isla Vista. Over about 98% of the population are renters. A vast population of them are students, college students. And a regular community services district created by our local LAFCO just wouldn't suit the needs of our community. With that, I'd just like to end this statement by just letting you know that UCSB administration, Associated Students of UCSB, and the SBC, Santa Barbara Community College Board of Trustees have all come out in support of this, and so have the local Santa Barbara Board of Supervisors as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any further in support? Any opposition to this measure? Let them have a seat. Yeah, let the opposition come. Don't we have the LAFCOs in opposition? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, good morning. David Wolf with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're opposed to AB3. And members, I would like to speak this morning on the UUT and the precedent-setting nature of it. This would be the first community service district with a UUT. It's dramatically unprecedented, and we would argue that it's inappropriate. I mean, there's plenty of existing ways for CSDs and CSAs to raise money, including benefit assessments and special taxes. We just don't believe this new type of tax is necessary for the Isla Vista CSD, if it is in fact enacted, to be able to raise money in this way. There's plenty of existing options. I'd also like to...
Does it require the vote of the people?
It does, Mr. Chairman, but let me respond to that as well, because I do believe, even though it does require a 2/3 vote, and as you know, this is not the first time I've been up here regarding authorization of taxes with a 2/3 vote, but let me just speak to that for a second, because I do believe there is a representation issue here. As has already been stated, the population that we're dealing with in Isla Vista is very transient in nature and is predominantly college students. It turns over pretty much exclusively, probably every 2 to 3 years. If you enact a special tax with a 2/3 vote, it's going to be in place for decades and without the opportunity for it to be reauthorized or reenacted in any way. So I think that actually the representation issue of it even speaks more as to why I don't think this is particularly warranted.
Isn't it a correlation? It was indicated in the earlier testimony, which I thought was pretty articulate, of the capital S versus the lowercase s. It's a class of people in a community that's different than others. Certainly I'm quite familiar with the Knox-Cortese-Hertzberg Act after 4 years of sweating my guts out of working on something I never wanted to work on. And I know much more than I ever wanted to know about that subject. But the point is that you have a class of people in a community that is distinctive, and maybe the individuals move on, but that the nature of services provided by an institution that provides the financial backbone and every other backbone for that community, there's a correlation. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, no, I certainly understand the big S, little s argument, and I'm obviously receptive to that. I mean, this is a student body population that's not going away because UCSB is not going away. But I would come back to just the original thrust of the argument in that there's plenty of existing ways to raise revenue that are more equitable and I think more fair to the population.
Any further in opposition? Senator Bell, question. We have further opposition?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Steve.
Okay.
Carlson.
Mr. Chair, members, Steve Carlson for the Santa Barbara Rental Property Association. We've been in extensive discussions with Assemblyman Williams, and I think our major concern is that the participation of rights of and burdens on the property owners in the district have not been adequately taken into account as we are setting up the CSD.
Such as? Just give me an example.
Well, and
These guys, the renters, the customers are the students. Right?
Participation and governance. You know, if there's a UUT, will a non-resident person who owns property in the district be able to vote on a UUT, be able to participate in that process? You heard one of the previous witnesses talk about one of the things that a power of the CSD is to deal with, quote, landlord grievances. Well, our clients are landlords, and if we're going to be involved with that, we would like to see a more direct ability to participate in the ways that govern and will affect their participation. So that is what we've been talking about, but we're not there yet.
Okay. Thank you. Others in opposition?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Gina Rodriguez with the California Taxpayers Association also opposed unless the bill is amended to remove the UUT authorization for all the reasons stated by Mr. Wolf at Jarvis.
Others in opposition? LAFCO's on here? Others in opposition? Is others folks here? No? Any questions from the members? Senator Morlock.
Cortez Knox Hertzberg. Very impressive.
My father.
All right, not your grandfather.
My dad.
Mr. Chair, I just enjoyed 8 years on LAFCO for Orange County, so I really understand what you've been going through in Santa Barbara with this issue. It's a conundrum, and I have some concerns. Maybe you could help me a little bit, Assemblyman Williams, but I want to talk about the utility user tax. I want to talk about circumventing the LAFCO in Santa Barbara. I want to talk about the fact that it doesn't look like there's any homeowners in Isla Vista and the population turnover. I just want to know, how can someone even serve out a 4-year term on the CSD? I was a little concerned about the mandated dates of when the Board of Supervisors had to act and 120 days for LAFCO to act. Then you place it on the ballot, and I've been through that drill in Orange County, and I won't belabor that. And then I want to talk about where's the closest sheriff's substation, because that seems to be an issue that keeps coming up. And what is the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department doing in this area, or not doing?
I'll answer the last question first. The Sheriff's Department has had a foot patrol substation in Isla Vista since soon after the famous Isla Vista riots of the 1970s. And the reason why there isn't, let's say, increasing pressure is because the staffing levels, financially, the county has been able to maintain staffing levels, but the population of Isla Vista has risen. And naturally, as population rises, so does your public safety needs. And if you think about it, every other college town of this sort of density and nature is in an incorporated city. And every incorporated city has additional tax mechanisms, including a UUT, in order to fund public safety services. Because of the incorporation of neighboring the city of Goleta, that took all the sales tax generating areas. A cityhood proposal by LAFCO's own findings is not viable. LAFCO has denied cityhood for Isla Vista in the past. And I would say that this is not circumventing LAFCO. It is simply saying that LAFCO is not going to block a vote of the people once again. LAFCO has had over 40 years to solve this problem. They have not done so. And the people of Isla Vista have never had a chance in all that time to vote on their local governance. Terms of office, there is a recreation and park district that locals get elected to. It is often an issue in the campaign that I will stay in Isla Vista long enough to serve out a 4-year term. That is often something that is talked about in the campaign. That is also one of the reasons why people were willing to have 2 appointed positions to help create the stability that would engender. The UUT. Well, the reason why we went to UUT is because all previous local governance proposals have been based on property tax, like most local governance. The issue that has always come up and the fight that has always come up is that in a community that is majority renters, people say, well, I'm going to pay the tax and they're going to vote it on me. So as a community, to balance the needs of homeowners, and there are homeowners in Isla Vista, and the needs of landlords who don't live in Isla Vista but own property, and renters, the UUT was chosen by the vast majority of stakeholders, including homeowners and landlords that showed up to the meetings, because everyone pays a little bit instead of it being a burden on one sector of the population. And we have bent over backwards to try to get landlords to be not as impacted and to be a part of the process. That is why we stayed away from property tax. We did not want to blow up this again. And I even had my staff pitch an appointment for landlords to the group of Isla Vistans, and they don't agree on everything, but both homeowners and students rejected having a dedicated seat for landlords on the board. So I hope that answers your questions.
Well, you're cutting, some new ground with this utility user tax, and we try to get a large island in between 2 cities. One city didn't want the island. The island didn't want the other city. It was, something that I worked on. It was a beautiful community of Rossmore. You might have driven by it when you go through Orange County. So they had to approve a utility users tax as well. Because it's never been done for a CSD and you're trying to get latent powers and all the other fun stuff that goes here, I'm just curious of whether you've looked at a bill that you just allowed CSDs to have utility users tax first, or is this just going to be just unique to Isla Vista?
I think that most stakeholders were in agreement that this vast majority of renters is pretty unique in unincorporated areas. Most unincorporated areas are more rural, some are a little suburban, but most have a much higher incidence of home ownership. And we'd be willing to look at other options, but I would think that a CSD based on property tax would be far more controversial to the parties in opposition and maybe to yourselves than a CSD based on a UUT.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Senator Bell.
Thank you. When I worked as an urban planner for the city of Santa Cruz, I see Assemblyman Stone, in the 70s, I was involved in the planning between the University of California, Santa Cruz and the city of Santa Cruz, and we had a task force that worked out a lot of these issues. And although I don't know the assembly member would say it's perfect, but I think a lot of the work we did in those days dealt with exactly these issues at that time in the 70s. When University of California, Santa Barbara was created a few decades before, they didn't go through that process. They didn't go through the kind of the town gown planning kind of activities that were necessary to create the needs of the students and the housing and the safety needs and the services needs of the students. And I think the Isla Vista situation where it was unincorporated, it was set aside unincorporated territory where apartments and structures were all of a sudden built in the, I guess, the 60s, mainly in the 60s, 70s, created a real, I think it is a true island of urbanism that had no, nobody in a responsible position to maintain the quality of life for the students. And then as a Gaucho parent, you know, I just want to say this.
You're qualified to vote on this if you're a Gaucho.
I guess I have as a step parent of a Gaucho, I guess I have a biased position because my stepson lived in Isla Vista while he was a student there. And my wife and I visited Isla Vista many times. And I'd have to say that when he went there, perhaps 18, 20 years ago, there was a lot of needs that they still talk about today. So what I'm going to say to you is this. There's been many decades that have passed since Isla Vista was created. There's been many opportunities to solve these problems. They haven't solved these problems. It's gone on and on and on. And to say that we should sit back and say the regular process is appropriate is inappropriate for taking care of the safety and protection of these young people that are trying to learn. And I think that we ought to approve his bill, give it a chance. If we have to tweak it later, we can come back and tweak it later.
Is that a motion?
I would make a motion approving this.
Excellent. Okay. Would you like anybody else, any other members want to say anything? Go ahead. Let's get it closed.
I respectfully ask for your aye vote. We believe that 40 years is too long, and we should not wait longer. And Isla Vista needs some solutions, and I appreciate your support to give it to them.
Okay. This is a motion do pass to appropriations. Secretary, call the roll.
Hertzberg.
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Wynn. Bell. Bell, aye. Hernandez. Hernandez, aye. Laura. Morlock. Morlock, no. Pavley. Pavley, aye. 4-1.
4-1. We'll keep it open for the absent members. Thank you very much.